doesn't have it. You know those years, the calculation of years of like 22, and there was
not 22.
5 rather, and there was 85 and 103. I try to figure numerology. Like there's no pattern.
I couldn't find any pattern.
Yavetz makes a correction.
Who does?
Yavetz.
Yavetz, yeah.
He makes it multiples of 22. So they have like 88, and he makes a correction on like 110.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the Marsha mentions the Torah's Kohanim. Of course, you mentioned also the complex, but he mentions the idea of Torah's Kohanim is the korban, get close to Hashem. So even though the material brings a person close to Hashem, but they studied and influence them.
Interesting.
That's what he mentions about the Torah's Kohanim.
Okay.
Also the purity, getting close to Hashem, the korban and purity. All this didn't help. Yeah.
All right, thank you. We're on Kuf Gimel Beis 103b.
What's the significance of being multiples of 22? That's the
Okay, that's how many years they reigned. It was in multiples of 22.
Oh, okay.
And also 22 letters of the alphabet in Hebrew. Yeah. So he had some connection with Torah. It's interesting. They were.
We mentioned before that we mentioned the reason why he got 22 years of leadership is because corresponding to 22 letters of Torah that he invested his effort into.
So look at this. It's amazing. They studied Torah, Torah's Kohanim,
and still didn't do anything
over so many years. Or so many times rather. It didn't influence them.
Why was David Melech successful? Because he said, my sin is in front of me continuously. Now, by constantly, this is a principle in chapter 13 of Tanya, that no matter how high a person gets, a person has to consider the fact that at any moment he could sin. And that keeps him on guard. As soon as he thinks, look how much Torah I'm doing, I'm good, I'm okay, that's when the problem arrives.
Past the finish line.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also, of course,
they've arrived.
David also said, "I need to last. Be very humble as well."
Yeah. Well, that's part of it.
Yeah.
When you have that sin, when you know what you're capable of in terms of the negative side. I was reading. This is a little of a tangent, but I mentioned anti-Semitism earlier. But I was reading some psychologist that studied the Holocaust and said that if you want to educate people to the point that you actually have it never again, like that never happens again. Besides from knowing what happened, it's important that people know they're capable of it. In other words, statistically speaking, if someone was there, they would have joined the bad behavior as well because of the way mass psychology works. But knowing that you're capable of it, you can then identify the signs as they arrive and stop it before it gets too far. So that's kind of a similar thing. If the person doesn't think he's capable of sinning because he's so amazing, that could be the beginning of the person's downfall. Anyway,
Tzaddik would be an exception to that, right?
Tzaddik technically would never sin, but without the words in Perek Gimel, even that's why in Perek Aleph he quotes the Gemara Nida, which said that one of the vows that Neshama says is that even if the whole world tells you you're a tzaddik, you're going to see yourself like a rasha. And Alter explains it to mean that even if you're actually a tzaddik, you should see yourself as if you're a beinoni, meaning you're capable of sin. And the tzaddik should see himself only as a beinoni, and that he's capable of sin even if he isn't technically sinning.
But the tzaddik he's transformed his Yetzer Hara. It's no longer.
And even him should consider himself as capable of it.
How could that be, though? He doesn't have any more capability of sinning.
Right, because the possibility is that he's a beinoni hamispalel kol hayom. Because even when a beinoni davens, during davening at least, he's at the level where he doesn't feel any inkling to negativity, even though it's possible somewhere deep down. So he should see himself as if he's a beinoni who's davening all day long.
Okay.
As if like the moment he lets up on his love for Hashem, it can resurface. I also once heard a line from, I don't know the source of this, but I heard this in the name of the Alter Rebbe, this comes from the previous Rebbe, that the description of a tzaddik in Tanya is the beinoni's perspective of a tzaddik. But a tzaddik perspective of his own reality could be completely, anyway. Okay. So Kuf Gimel Beis 103b. The line begins with the word Meya, Ushleisha, and the third word is Tanya. It's about a quarter down from the top of the page. The line begins with the word Meya, Ushleisha, and the third one is Tanya. There. Kuf Gimel Beis 103b. Meya, Ushleisha, Tanya. Okay, Tanya, we've been taught in the Mishnaic age text. Meir used to say, Avshalom en lechelek lamhaba. Avshalom, of course, is King David's son, who rebelled against King David and led an army to wage battle against his own father, even being successful in recruiting some of David's most trusted advisors, at least for a time. They were his advisors. And primarily it was spawned, I think that's the word, by the fact that he knew that he wasn't going to inherit his father's position. So that jealousy led him to lead a revolution against his father. So Rabbi Meir used to say that Avshalom does not have a share in the world to come, adding him to the list of people. Now, it wouldn't contradict the Mishnah, because the Mishnah specifically says there were 3 kings who didn't get a share in the world to come, and then 4 commoners. Now, one could argue that Avshalom is neither a commoner, being a prince, and not a king, because he never actually made it to the throne. So maybe it's not a contradiction to the Mishnah, but nonetheless, it's an addition that the Mishnah does not have. And namely, good morning, that Rabbi Meir is of the view that Avshalom lost his share in the world to come. Shenemar, as the verse reads, this is the end of the battle. Right, this is when his hair gets caught in the tree, the famous story. So the verse reads, Vayaku es Avshalom, and they smote. Smote is past tense of smite.
Big smoke,
Yeah. So they smote Avshalom, they beat him. Vayamiseu, and they killed him. So Rabbi Meir is pointing to the fact that it seems to be double expression. Had they just write Vayaku, that they smote him, it would have been understood that he was dead. It does not have to repeat and say Vayamiseu, and they killed him. Yeah. So the fact that there's a double expression says Rabbi Meir interprets this to mean Vayakeu, and they smote him in his physical world, physically killed him. Vayamiseu, and then the verse which repeats itself and says, and they killed him, means a separate death, a spiritual death. L'olam haba, and they lost a share in the world to come. So this is Rabbi Meir's view. Speaking of Rabbi Meir, who analyzes the biblical history, the Gemara tells us another statement. Tanya, we learned in the Mishnaic age text. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, son of Elazar, said, Mishum Rabbi Meir, and then Rabbi Meir. Again, Rabbi Meir is speaking here. Achaz v'Achazaya, I think that's to pronounce the name. Achazia, who were 2 kings of the northern kingdom. V'chol malchei Yisrael, and any of the northern kings. Shekosu b'hen, of which it states, Vayas hara b'eni Hashem.
They're Malchi Yehuda. Then the ones are Malchi Yisrael.
I'm sorry, yes, they were. So they too were Malchi Yehuda. My apologies, that's why they're singled out. Reverse. Achaz and Achazayo are from the southern kingdom. Okay. But them two, and V'chol Malchi Yisrael, and any king in the northern kingdom, Shekasa b'hen, of whom it states, Vayas hara b'eni Hashem, they did that which is evil in God's eyes, which is a verse that repeats itself a number of times with respect to a few kings. Lo yechayin v'lo nidonin. They don't live, as that meaning to say, they don't get the share in the world to come with the righteous, but they aren't v'lo nidonin, they aren't condemned to purgatory. They're in limbo. They're not in Gehenim and not in Olam Haba. Nishtahir. It's quite a thing. So just to clarify here, the Rameir statement is it's Achaz and Achazaya and all the kings of the north, which means like this: the kings of the south who are not Achaz and Achazaya are not on this list, and that is important because Rashi tells us that includes Shlomo and Tzidkiyahu. Both Shlomo and Tzidkiyahu, right? Yeah. Where am I? That's Rashi says Shlomo and Tzidkiyahu, who were from the house of David, and therefore the southern kingdom. And it does mention in the verse, Vayas hara b'eni Hashem, they did that which is bad in God's eyes. They do not fall into this category. For whatever reason, either they did teshuvah or because they're bad in God's eyes isn't as egregious. Whatever God's calculation is, I don't know. But they aren't in the list. The only people who are of the southern kingdom that are on this list of in limbo is Achaz and Achazaya. So it's anybody in the northern kingdom of whom it says they did that which is bad, and Achaz and Achazaya. Anybody from the southern kingdom, even if it says and they did that which is bad in God's eyes, are not on this list. Okay. Now we have a beautiful. It's a. I shouldn't say beautiful. It's a dark teaching, but it has a very powerful message. Let's put it that way. The verse reads like this: the gam dam naki, as well as innocent blood, literally clean blood, but innocent blood. Shafach Menashe. Menashe spilled, harbe ma'od, very much, exceedingly, killing people. Adar shamale Yerushalayim, poi lepoi, to the point that Yerushalayim was covered from here to there, or peh lepeh, from lip to lip, meaning from one end to the other. The whole Jerusalem is covered in blood. That's how much murder there's going on. In addition to the fact that he caused those in the southern kingdom, in Yehuda, the southern kingdom, to do that which is evil in God's eyes, namely idol worship. Okay, that's the verse. So says the Gemara this, Hacha, here in Babylonia, in Bavel, here where the Gemara is speaking, in exile, Targimuhu, we understood it to mean Shahara Yeshaya, that they killed the prophet Isaiah, that he killed the prophet Isaiah. That's what it means, that he killed. And there was blood flowing like from one end of Yerushalayim to the other end of Yerushalayim. It's a reference not to mass murder, but actually the murder of one person, the prophet Yeshaya. The Marava in the west of where we are in Bavel, we as in the Gemara, is Eretz Yisrael. That's how they refer to the land of Israel as Marava, the west. So in the west, Amri, they understood it, Sha'asat Selam, that he made a statue, an idol, Masoi, that required the carrying of Elef and the other 1,000 people. That's how big it was. It took 1,000 people to carry it. And B'chol Yom V'Yom, and every single day, he would have 1,000 people carry it for whatever purpose, taking it from one location to another location, I don't know. But 1,000 people would carry it every day. And Hoydigas Kulam, and it was so heavy that it would crush those 1,000 people and kill them all. And that's the murder, the actual mass murder through idol worship. So two versions. In Bavel, they understood it to mean that he killed one person, the prophet Yeshaya. And in Yerushalayim, and in Eretz Yisrael, they understood it to mean the literal mass murder through making these people carry this enormous structure every day, crushing them. Just conclude the statement before I comment on this and what I think the powerful message here is. So now the Gemara comments on this discussion. Kaman Ozla, between these two views, who would the following statement be in line with? Kaman Ozla Hadam Rabbi Bar Chana. In accordance with who would the following statement of Rabbi Bar Chana be in line with? What did Rabbi Bar Chana say? He said, Shkula Neshama Shal Tzaddik, the soul of one tzaddik is equivalent, echad keneged kol olam kuloi, equal to the entire world. So who would that follow? Command Amad, this would follow the view of the one who said Yeshaya Harag, that Yeshaya was killed. Because the verse describes it as murder of Jerusalem from one end to the other. And this view says it's only one person, Yeshaya. So that would substantiate Rabbi Bar Chana's view, only Rabbi Bar Chana's view would be in line with that, and that the death of one tzaddik is equivalent to the whole of the people. So, this is the Gemara literally. We might suggest as follows. It's clear from both views that the physical death, not negating the physical literal reading of this passage, but it's clear there's a spiritual element to it in both views. First of all, killing the prophet is clear. Why is killing the prophet so detrimental to the whole of Jerusalem and it's equal to everybody? Because the prophet provides spiritual life for everybody. He's a spiritual lifeline of everybody. Killing him is a spiritual death for everybody. And likewise, even the view which says that he killed 1,000 people a day, it's in this spiritual kind of way, making them carry an idol. As if to say he's burdening them, spiritually speaking as it were, with negative influence, with idol worship influence, and that crushed them, resulting in a physical death. But it's also a spiritual idea here, similar to how it's often understood, that Rabbi explains this a number of times, since we're connecting it to the Parsha, where Paroi commands that they throw the Jewish boys into the Nile. This is yesterday's Chumash. Paroi commands that actually not the Jewish boys, he actually commands that all boys be thrown into the Nile. And it's understood. So the Rabbi explains this, and many others. The Nile, of course, is the idol worship, was the idol of Egypt. And throwing the boys into the idol is a kind of spiritual death besides the physical death, and that he wants them to be drowned and soak up the idol worshipping culture of Egypt, represented by the Nile, and therefore the physical punishment is in the Nile. So similar here, it's not just a death. He could have had a catastrophe killed a day in any other way, but he does it in such a way they're carrying the burden of some idol, and that's crushing them. So clearly there's a spiritual underlying to this whole thing as well. Now in that sense, in a way it's easier to understand, or it's easier to understand, or to imagine that the death of a tzaddik is equal to the death of everybody, if we're talking about it in the spiritual sense. The tzaddik, whose job it is to be the spiritual pulse of the Jewish people, so his death causes that spiritual cutoff. We might even add like this, perhaps. In Bavel, they interpret it to mean the death of Yeshaya, and in Yerushalayim they interpret it to mean the death of the people. And maybe it means something like this. In Bavel, when they're outside of Eretz Yisrael, where the level of spirituality is a lower state, it is more apparent the need to connect to a tzaddik to have a spiritual life. In Eretz Yisrael, where the whole place is spiritual elevation, especially Yerushalayim, right? There is the Gemara said that a person walks into Yerushalayim, it adds gives them spiritual vitality. So the death, as it were, is directly to them because they have a more direct contact with the spiritual life, and therefore they have to be crushed, as it were, with the weight of idol worship. But in Bavel, where their spiritual line their spiritual connection is even more importantly connected to the tzaddik. So the way they understood it was, you're talking about death of the whole people, it has to be the tzaddik. That must be the way it goes about. And this connects as well to something from the end of last week's parsha. The last words of the parsha are, last week's of Chumash Bereshis is, Vayechi, and the whole book of Bereshis is, that they placed Yosef in the Aron, in the ark, in Mitzrayim. And Rabbi asks, you go from there saying Chazak, Chazak, where's the Chizuk? You put the guy in the ark and there's the Chizuk. So what's the Chizuk? The Chizuk there is that unlike Yaakov, who was of an older generation, he asked to be taken out of Egypt right away, and there was a whole procession taking Yaakov out of Egypt so he can be buried in Eretz Yisrael and rest in peace for his service of Hashem. But when it came to Yosef, who was the leader of the Jewish people in Egypt, he led the people in Egypt in exile. He says, no, I stay right here. And when you go out, I go out. As if to say, in Egypt, it's most important that tzaddik remain. Because that's where in exile, is where the Jew really needs the tzaddik, the Rebbe, the Navi, to keep his spiritual line going. And that is chazak. That's the biggest strength. That even when we're in exile, we know, our Yosef is here, and it's not going anywhere until we go somewhere. Which is why, at least according to one Medrash, why Moshe Rabbeinu did not go into Eretz Yisrael, because his generation all died in the desert, and unless they're going into Mashiach, he's not going into Mashiach with them. So likewise, perhaps over here in Bavel specifically, they're most concerned with the prophet. That's perhaps what the Gemara means on a deeper kind of level here.
It's also another illustration of the interconnectedness of the spiritual and the physical.
That's correct.
Which we see all throughout Torah. It's another discussion.
That spiritual life has a direct effect on physical life.
Right. Even the Exodus, the physical hardships reflected
a spiritual denigration.
Led to a spiritual. Anyway,
yeah.
It's all
much more in sync. You couldn't differentiate.
Independent, they're always connected somehow.
Yeah. Okay. Now we have another statement, which is an interesting statement and requires explanation, requires something to think about. It says more like this. Ksiv, it says in Malachim, in the Book of Kings, in describing Menashe as putting a idol in the temple, in the Heichal, in the sanctuary. It says pesel in the singular. Yeah, Ksiv pesel. We're going to get into more chutzpah soon. We're going to get to more chutzpah. You're alone tomorrow, maybe. But Ksiv pesel, it says that Menashe put a pesel in the singular in the Beis Hamikdash. Ksiv, but then when the verse repeats the story in the Book of Chronicles in Divrei Hayamim, it says psilim in the plural. So did he put one, or did he put more than one? So Amar Bechin explains. Betchila, to start, also parts of echad. He put an idol that had only one face. Parts of echad, one face. And later, that wasn't good enough. Also arba parts of him. He made it out of four faces. What purpose? Why four faces? What's the difference between 4 and 1? What's the difference? It's an idol, an idol, an idol, an idol, an idol. Who cares?
Each letter of Hashem.
So let's see. 1 second. Says the Gemara. Let's see. So that the presence of Hashem. We'll see in a second, maybe.
Direction.
But they might be right. Let's see. Because he wanted to make sure that the presence of Hashem sees it. The tichos and the presence of Hashem should be angry. So Rashi explains, what does it mean the presence of Hashem should see it? Because the presence of Hashem comes into the Beis Hamikdash through the Heichal. This is literally what the way Rashi reads, which is why I said to begin with this requires explanation. But the literal reading of Rashi in his understanding of this Gemara is that when the Shekhinah, when the presence of Hashem enters in the Holy of Holies, if there was only one face, so the Shekhinah, as it were, can go behind the idol and not see the face of the idol. But since it has 4 directions, there's nowhere that God's going to go without seeing it. So of course this requires explanation. When God doesn't see it if he's walking behind it, like what? So he's not angry because of the...
You can hide from God.
Yeah, like what's going on here? So L'choda means simply, it would seem to me that it means, and this is, I'm going to say this now, it'll frame the way we're going to understand the Gemara, the way we'll understand the Gemara tomorrow as well, because the Gemara is going to take this a step further tomorrow. But it would seem that what he really means saying is, well, obviously we're physically talking about one direction versus 4 directions, but what I think it means is that, to begin with, he was saying, okay, I'm cutting God out, as it were. But then he's saying, I want to make it clear that I'm cutting God out of every part of reality. In other words, to say like this, otherwise, person has a taiva, a person has some desire that's not of a good nature. So, and he succumbs to that desire. Does it mean he cut God out of his life? Not necessarily. He fell to a certain thing. So there's other parts of his life where he's very welcoming to God, as it were. So even though it's true that Hashem is upset about him falling into that negative behavior, but there's still a part of him that has a open relationship with Hashem, because there's a place that's not full of this idol, as it were. But by putting an idol in all 4 directions, what he's saying is there's no place for Hashem here. And that's what he means, that the Shekhinah should see it wherever it goes. The Shekhinah sees everything. The presence of Hashem knows what's going on. But the point he's making is, he wants to demonstrate there's no place for Hashem in here. It's in all 4 directions. And this, framing it in this way, and that's why it's 4, connects to the 4 directions, connects to the 4 letters of Hashem's name, all those things connect into the number 4. But it's all to make this point, I think. He wants to make this point, there's no room for Hashem in our life, in our reality. We're putting this in all directions. Understanding it this way is going to frame the way we understand the next few Gemaras, and we're going to see soon how there was one of the sages who cried over this idea. Literally used to cry over this idea, as we shall learn, God willing, tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, everybody.